What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Now, in this video, I want to talk about Dominique Wilkins. Okay, now Dominique Wilkins was a phenomenal player, one of the most exciting players of his generation. And some people will forget that there was a time when he was seen as being on par with Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, his career did not develop in the same way that Jordan did. He didn't have the same fortunes playing on a franchise, playing with a franchise, excuse me, that was as invested in winning as they were at that time, getting the right pieces. And, unfortunately, Wilkins became one of many players, great players, who didn't win a championship in the NBA. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe Wilkins won a championship over in Europe and Greece in 1996. I believe he was the championship series MVP. And I think he was league MVP, if I'm not mistaken. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But I want to talk about Dominique Wilkins. I think I've talked about him before on my channel, but I want to talk about him again because I want to tell you just how silly it is to grade an NBA player based on a championship ring. Okay? It's silly, it's stupid, and it's asinine. Dominique Wilkins entered the NBA back in 1982. Now, initially, he had been drafted by the Utah Jazz. He didn't want to play there. He went to college, Georgia Tech, I believe it was. He didn't want to play for Utah. Ultimately, he was traded before the season started to Atlanta Hawks, which was closer to where his hometown was, right? So with Atlanta, I think his rookie year he averaged 17 points a game, and he instantly showed that he was made for the NBA. It took him a couple of years to reach All-Star status. I think it was his third year in the NBA, which would be 84, 85. And he averaged 24 points a game then. But I want to say something from 84 to about 88. People have to remember that Dominique Wilkins and the Atlanta Hawks were seen in the same vein, at least for a while, as Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Both were exciting individual one-on-one players that were known for dunking and their athleticism and high-scoring exploits. Um, both of them were on teams that were on the upside of their journey or tenure in the NBA. When I say the upside, I mean they were on the ascendancy. They had been bad franchises that had been marred by drug use from other players, from past players. But now they were teams that were becoming average or adequate, or now they're becoming playoff teams. They were known for going at one another, Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan. I remember my brother was telling me back in the day when these guys really played in exhibitions. Um, one time they came to the Richmond Coliseum during an exhibition between Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls. And Jordan, I think, went off for 40 points. Wilkins went off for 35, and they put on a show. Nowadays, these guys don't even play in exhibitions, you know. But they had a one-man rivalry. Jordan lit up the Hawks for 61 points during the 86-87 season. Dominique Wilkins' career high of 57 points was established against the Chicago Bulls. So they did have a rivalry, culminating in the 1988 slam dunk contest, which most people believe Dominique should have won. But of course, being in Chicago and politics playing a role, Jordan won it. And I think it was that season, the 87-88 season, which saw the last comparisons or the last time that you kind of saw both of them on the same level. And this is why I say that, at least in my opinion. That year, the Atlanta Hawks took the Boston Celtics to the Eastern Conference semifinals. They took them to 7 games. Dominique Wilkins came out in that pivotal seventh game, that do or die game. And he dropped 47 points. Okay. And you can't say Dominique Wilkins didn't show up for that game. He went out there and he did it all. He lit it up from the outside. You know what I'm saying? Well, I should say he lit it up from the mid range. They didn't really take a lot of threes back then. But when I say outside, he lit it up from the mid range. He was showcasing that he had been working on his game. He wasn't just a guy that was about the dunk, even though he was called a human highlight film or the human highlight reel, depending on who you're talking to. He did more than just dunk. That's what he was known for, but he had been working on his mid-range game. He had been working on, being able to shoot and expand his range. He even been working on some of his passing ability. Now, I'm not saying he ever became, LeBron James, but he knew there were certain weaknesses in his game that he'd been working on. He even worked on his defense. Wilkins at one point was considered a pretty weak defensive player. I think that, he never became a lockdown defender, but he became a average defender eventually. Um, but Bird just had an unbelievable fourth quarter, where I think he scored 20 points in the fourth quarter and sealed the deal for Boston. And, Atlanta was eliminated. But Jordan had such a dominant regular season, and this is what I think separated Jordan from Wilkins. Number one, his team was better. Number two, Jordan was more driven than Wilkins was to do whatever it took to be the best. Jordan had shown that year that he had worked diligently on his defense. Everyone just saw Jordan as this offensive threat, but Jordan led the league in steals that year. For the second year in a row, he had 200 steals and 100 blocks. And you could see the elevation in his game that year. And over the next couple of seasons, Chicago got better and better, playing better and better against Detroit, whereas Atlanta kind of stagnated. Atlanta had some good seasons, they had some bad seasons, but they never showed that they were consistently improving year in and year out. So by the time Michael Jordan finally wins a championship in 1991, Dominique Wilkins is now 31 years old, infamously spazzing a dunk during the 91 All-Star game, which showed that Father Time was starting to take a toll on his extraordinary uber athleticism. And then when the Bulls were on their quest for a repeat, Dominique Wilkins suffers an injury in a game, I think it was January 1992 against Philly, where he tears his Achilles. And back then, a torn Achilles, that was death for your career. Everybody thought it's over. Dominique Wilkins, either he's not going to play again, or he's going to be a shell of himself. He's going to be a guy that might put up 10 points a game, or on a in a limited role for a couple of years, and he's going to be done. But Bernard King had shown that even back then there had been advancements in athletes coming back quicker and being able to perform if they put in the hard work. Back then, there was no microfracture surgery. They opened up your fucking leg. They opened up your knee like they did with Bernard King. They opened up the bottom part of your leg and reattached your Achilles. It was a gruesome process. But Dominique Wilkins persevered. And he came back for the 92-93 season. And he started off a little bit slowly, but then he rose and rose and rose. And in the second half of that season, if I'm not mistaken, he led the NBA in scoring. And Jordan won the scoring title averaging 32.6, but Wilkins averaged almost 30 points a game on the head, even though I think the first month of the season he only averaged 24 points a game. So Wilkins had a phenomenal comeback season for Atlanta, won comeback player of the year, and for the rest of his career, he was still, a great player. Now he did make some changes to his game. Um, he did dunk. He still was a guy that you had to look out for at least one great slam in a game, but his game wasn't as predicated on that anymore. He showcased more of his mid-range game, which had improved tremendously, and he had shown that he had worked on his outside shot, a three-point shot. He wasn't a marksman, but he was a guy you had to respect, usually shooting around 33 to 35% from three. And he had worked a lot on his passing ability, his playmaking ability, getting others involved in utilizing, people coming to him. He can make other guys better with his passing. So Dominique had worked on his game, but by this time, Michael Jordan had retired as a three-time champion. Wilkins had come back and played high at a high level, but then something, that still makes people scratch their head happened. 93, 94, Atlanta comes out and they're playing very well. Wilkins is having a great season, but then the Hawks trade him. They trade him to the Clippers, which at the time was one of the worst franchises in the NBA. And Atlanta Hawk fans were pissed at this. It was one of the most unpopular trades in the franchise history, one of the most unpopular trades in sports history, period. The only excuse could be that they thought it was time to rebuild. Wilkins at that time was about 30, I think 33 years old, and they thought it was time to rebuild. The next couple of years, Dominique Wilkins is still a star. He was on the 1994 FIBA championship team. He was still a star player, but he wasn't quite the threshold he once was, 6, 7 years earlier, as the NBA now has new stars, new faces like Reggie Miller and Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway and Glenn Rice and Grant Hill and Jason Kidd and Jamal Mashburn and Jimmy Jackson and Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning and Derek Coleman. You know what I'm saying? Mark Price. Well, Mark Price already been established a little bit by the time, but don't tell me the NBA didn't have stars back then. If you say that, you don't know what the goddamn you talking about. You know what I'm saying? So because it was such a star-studded league, um, Wilkins kind of fell in the wayside a little bit. The next year he played with Boston. He didn't really fit uh, with that team well. He hated his head coach there, who I believe was Phil Ford. He hated the coach there, and the next year he's not in the NBA. He goes overseas. I believe he plays in Greece, plays in their pro league. I think he wins a championship. By this time, Michael Jordan's back in the NBA and leading the Bulls to a record 72, at least a then record 72 wins. And they win a championship. The next year, Dominique Wilkins, although he was already 36 years old at that time, signed for the San Antonio Spurs, who are in desperate need of scoring because of the injury to David Robinson. And he goes there and averages, I think, 17 points a game, pretty much coming off the bench by that point. but still was a huge spark plug for that team and had a sensational, year considering his age and considering his role. I believe he led the team in scoring, but they only went 21-61, and he leads the NBA again. He comes back one final year, 98-99 with Orlando. But by that time, Father Time had caught up with Dominique Wilkins, and he really wasn't the same guy at all. And after that season, he retired. So Wilkins never got the opportunity to play with Hall of Fame teammates, to play with great, great players. I mean, when you think about it, his best teammates were probably, I'm trying to remember whether or not he played with Mookie Blaylock. I think he did. I think he played with Mookie for maybe a part of a year that he was traded, or Mookie came the year afterward. Because I know Mookie was with New Jersey before he went to Atlanta. But look, generally speaking, the best player he played with was probably Doc Rivers, Kevin Willis. That team was good, but they weren't a championship level team. Okay. Um, but Dominique Wilkins himself, despite the fact that he missed several seasons, or quite a few seasons, due to either injury or not being in the league, he still amassed over 26,000 points. Imagine if he never tore his Achilles and he played all of 91, 92. He didn't miss the entire 95, 96 season. And he didn't miss the entire 97, 98 season. We're talking about a guy that probably would have eclipsed 30,000 career points. Wilkins scored over 25 points a game, or almost 25 points a game for his career. Won the scoring title in 85, 86. And, he's one of the most dangerous players. And I often wonder what could have happened if Dominique Wilkins had played with Michael Jordan instead of Jordan playing with Scottie Pippen. Because they had so much respect for one another. And Wilkins was an ultimate competitor. And he was Scottie was a great compliment. I think Wilkins would have been comfortable being a number two guy, even though he was a scorer himself. But I think that would have worked with each other. You know, Jordan may not have had to average 37 and 35 anymore, but Jordan could have averaged 27. Wilkins could have averaged 24, 25, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They would have been a hell of a. You couldn't stop those two. You know what I'm saying? You try to stop one. Jordan was a utility guy that could do it all, really. Wilkins was a guy with slightly less skill, but just slightly. Wilkins was a guy that could light you up for 40 or 50 any night. I do wonder about that. If they could have played with each other, how that would have worked out. But anyway, kudos to Dominique Wilkins. And, he was the first ballot Hall of Famer. And, he still to this day is in the conversation for greatest dunker of all time. Now, some people give it to Vince Carter. I guess you could give it to Vince Carter, but Dominique Wilkins was, he was a combination of like, great athleticism, but it was also force. His dunks were nasty. His dunks were more of a combination of Vince and Sean Kemp, or if it makes any sense, Jordan and Baby Shaq. Like Wilkins wanted to punish the rim. Wilkins wanted to destroy the rim when he dunked. He wanted to destroy you. And he had certain in-game dunks that only he could do. That only a few handful of people will be able to pull off. You know what I'm saying? There are some people that can dunk, but then there are some dunks that happen in games that most people can't do. The ones that the doctor have done, or Jordan could do, or Wilkins, the way they were able to contort their body against the defense and still pull off these amazing dunks in split second timing. It's remarkable if you really slow it down and look at what these guys are able to do. So I just want to give a nod to Dominique Wilkins, one of the great players of his generation and one of the most underappreciated talents of